Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Black Mental Health Matters Show. Now, our mission here is to encourage open dialogue around mental health among Black communities. Now, I'm your host, Amanda Eke, and today we have very, very special guests with us discussing relationships, family, as well as mental health. So let me go ahead. I will add them to the stream. And for our wonderful guests, please do, let's begin with you, Dr. Megan. Please do introduce yourselves. Tell us what you do.
Hello, I am Dr. Megan Pickens. I am in Arlington, Texas, in private practice. I've been in practice for 14 years, and I specialize in work with high achieving Black women and their partners. I also work with other helpers, like therapists, especially who don't often take care of themselves. I am a supervisor and a supervisor trainer, past president of the Texas Association of Counselor Education and Supervision, and I also run the Multicultural Behavioral Health Provider Network, which we call MBHPN. So I don't know. I'm an empty nester. I'm enjoying 50, loving life here in Texas.
There we go. All right. Thanks so much, Dr. Megan. Dr. Camille, please do introduce yourself.
Well, I don't do nothing close to what Dr. Megan do. So, no, I'm Dr. Camille Adams Jones, best known as Miss Doc Jones. I'm a native New Yorker, but currently residing in the Washington, D.C. area. I'm a psychotherapist by trade, a behavior scientist by model. I'm about all things wellness. I do a great deal of organizational wellness in the form of employee assistance programs and support. And I do a great deal of mediation and couples work, working with families going through the separation structure of divorce or disenfranchised or just a separate divorce or separation. I'm a big time piece on pulling yourself together. And by pulling yourself together is by finding relationships and removing yourself from places, spaces, and people that don't best serve you. And I think a lot of that comes with washing off a great deal of generational residue that I think many of us don't even realize we have in our families, based on the fact that we believe we've been following a model that is the correct model, but generations before us, unlike what they may believe, didn't always get it right. So I spend my days working on wellness to course correct a great deal of that. And I'm so excited to be here today.
Gorgeous, gorgeous. All right. Thank you to both of you for taking some time out and talking to us today. So we have, I think, what is such a big topic, and it's such an interesting topic, relationships, family, and mental health. How do all these things coincide? How do these things affect us? And, I think a lot of us kind of, relationships, they happen in so many ways, whether it be at the workplace, friendships, marriage, romantic partners. I mean, life is all about relationships, right? So I kind of want to first ask both of you, from your professional opinions, what are relationships? What are they? Romantic, from familial to friendships. What are they, and why are they so important to us as human beings? We can start with you, Dr. Megan.
So what I define as a relationship is being in a long-term committed relationship. It usually involves love, fidelity. I kind of wrote down some stuff, and intimacy that you don't share with someone else. So I think that's the big thing. That's what makes a romantic relationship different from friendships, which are shared with others by traditional definition, because there are different types of relationships. So I don't want to leave those out. But in general, there's still a level of intimacy and only sharing between the people involved.
Absolutely, absolutely. Dr. Camille, what is your take on that? What defines a relationship?
I think from a broader standpoint, relationships are connectivity. They're intersex, and the biggest commonality of all relationships, they're transactional. And I think that's how they're defined. Like, how did you fare in that transaction? Like, from friendships, is this a give take? From romantic, there's this myth that romantic relationships should be 50-50. I've been married now for 15 years, going on 16. That's a unicorn. And that's also the case with friendships. There's going to be some moments where you give 80 and your partner's only got 20. There are those rare moments where y'all are balancing it out and somebody cooked and somebody did the dishes. That's that rare intersect where the equator lined up and the moon was just where it needed to be, and that was a 50-50 moment in the relationship. At work, your workplace relationships, like it's transactional. Give me my check. I'm here for my coins. I did my report. I turned in my service. I produced my product. Give me back the goods that I deserve from them. Yeah. So, and I don't think individuals put a great deal of emphasis on how these intersects and connections impact their mental health as well as their physical response in life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You make such a good point. I mean, this kind of, very much a lot of relationships, they are those kind of transactions, it's like you put in what you put in, you get out, almost is some way analogy to look at it. Now, I'm kind of curious for you all now, from your kind of perspectives as professionals in these fields, what are some components really of a healthy relationship? Let's first start off with just romantic relationships. That's the topic on everyone's minds these days, right?
Always.
What does it look like when it's healthy? We can start with anybody.
So when it's healthy, there is equal participation, or at least fair participation. And I hate to say it like this, but this is the best way I can get, I think audience of today understand. It's not imagined. It's not imagined. You're not in there in this fog and phase of something that's truly not there from a romantic standpoint. And then I tell people, if he or she can only see you from 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, because after 5, he or she is with the Lord, you are not the main priority. If major holidays, birthdays, or a 10 o'clock call can't be answered, you are likely not the centralized piece of that relationship. And that's where it comes from, in that real or imagined. And then the other aspect is the participation piece. Is there a chase? Is it hard? Is it hard to maintain? When I say hard, it means like you are putting in work to the death. Like you are dressed in black, circling around the corner, making sure everybody is where they say they're supposed to be. When you look at them, they have 3 phones, and when yours ring, it says, your code name is on the low. Like, is it hard? Is it hard? And I think a great deal of individuals are in imagined relationships. And you have fostered this notion that this individual is yours, or this relationship is more than it is. And then when that shock value of, wow, this is not what I thought it was, hits, your behavior is impacted tremendously. And then your physical, mental, socio-emotional, all of that starts to unravel, especially when you don't have a high grasp on that aspect of life already. Dr. Megan, what y'all got going down there in Texas? This behavior originated from Texas.
Girl, don't even get me started on dating and romantic relationships in Dallas. It's a trip. I wanted to add that I think relationships need a certain amount of curiosity and interest in each other. So, if you said you've been married for 15 years. So I know you have to have some level of continuing to learn things about each other, or try to, create things that you need to learn about each other. You can't just be stagnant. And I'm sure you're not the same woman that you were 15 years ago. And saying,
I think that's what makes it so amazing. Like, and we have this thing called first, like doing our first together, like whether it's a trip or new restaurant, different things like that.
Yes.
It's interesting. And then, we have shaken this relationship all the way up by adding children to it.
Exactly.
Children will share your romantic love. We used to go everywhere, all over the world, Africa, Southeast Asia. Now we have 3, and we go to Target and we come back to the house. So you're absolutely right. I never considered that, but keeping it interesting, fresh, and curiosity, I like that. Keeping on learning from each other.
Yeah, I mean, you have to, and you have to evolve. You're not going to be married to the same person. Also, conflict resolution, how you handle conflict. If you handle conflict, do you push it under the rug? I'm continuously telling couples that avoiding conflict does not avoid conflict. It's still there. it's just building into a nice little ball of resentment that's going to come out some kind of way, healthy or unhealthy. So that is another big one for me. And then also, I'm a spontaneous outgoing person, so fun. People don't have fun. Adults don't even have fun anymore. So I think fun needs to be incorporated into your relationship. And it goes with that curiosity part. But like you said, right now, you guys are going to Target and doing all that kind of stuff. But hey, Target can be fun. Or the kids can be left with somebody, so fun can be had, even if it's like a day in the park listening to live music or whatever, but just having some kind of fun and avoiding the monotony that can sometimes build in.
Yep, absolutely. Well, and then what
No,
about
I think both of you.
Sorry. Go ahead, Amanda.
No, I think both of you make such great points. Dr. Camille, you have made such a good, I've actually never heard of someone described as it before. A lot of us are in imagined relationships. In our minds, It may be better than what it is. You're not maybe necessarily, you're imagining the perfect marriage, the perfect relationship with a boyfriend and a girlfriend, and it's not really outside. It's not really your reality. I kind of wanted to hit back on that point that both of you are kind of making now. I want to know what, say, a romantic toxic relationship. How do you know? I think a lot of people sometimes, like you said, Dr. Camille, this idea of imagining what you want, actual toxic relationship. And what do you see from y'all's professional perspective? A lot of people, I'm sure, miss those signs because you've been kind of indoctrinated. You're looking at the 20% good as opposed to 80% bad. What are some signs for people that may not notice them, that this is a toxic romantic relationship? And we can start with you, Dr. Camille.
I just say that I guess the best way to describe it is that they're not minimalist. When you're in a toxic relation, they are glaring to everybody with the mindset that wants to see. For example, it starts when you're in a toxic romantic relationship, it impacts your familiar relationships, your friendships, all of those aspects, because those who care, adore, and surround you can see it. But you have blinders on, a blind spot. Some of the biggest signs is your changed behavior. You may be one way, and now you've evolved into this other compromised segment of yourself that those of you who have a greater understanding of who you are and your presence can see the change, whether it be clothes like you've always dressed, in a manner that makes you comfortable, but now you're with someone who doesn't appreciate that level of your dress. So now your garments are completely changed. They don't like the makeup you wear, so you've gone from the Maybelline queen to just some Carmex on your lips. Locations, music you used to hang out with, places you used to go, bottomless mimosa brunches. You can't do that no more. Just those kind of things that start to subtract you from who you were and the things and the presence you used to maintain. Those are the most glaring aspects when there's been this like large change in adaptation and behavior and style. Now it's different. As Dr. Megan said, I've been married for 15 years. When my husband met me, I loved to ride on the back of motorcycles. And he was like, okay, this motorcycle riding, that I'd like us to cease. And I didn't see that as a segment of him taking that away from me and things like that. I saw him as a segment of who was riding in the front of that motorcycle and who I was gripping on the back of that motorcycle. So I said, okay, you're right. Let me change that behavior. Now that's not necessarily a toxin, but those that take you away from your loved ones, separate you, control you, take away the dynamics that make you no longer have voice. Those are the signs of like the toxic avenues of a relationship that's really not serving you well. Megan,
yes, and I second everything you said because I spent time in one of those. Shockingly enough. And one of the big things that I learned during that experience is that people on the outside judge people a lot about what they accept and what they take. But sometimes when you're on the inside of that, you don't even know what's happening. And especially when it's emotional. So those little, I call them little suggestions and just little barbs and stuff like that, you know, in the scheme of things, like once a week or whatever, it doesn't seem like a big thing. But when you've had that over years, that has chopped away with your self-esteem, your awareness that it's even unhealthy. And sometimes it takes somebody outside of you to do that. And so even with, and especially doing therapy, you know, for me, it was like, okay, I'm talking to a client and I'm saying, oh no, you were being emotionally abused and blah, blah, blah. And I'm reading this list and I'm like,
hey, that's me.
Oh, that's me. Exactly. And not knowing it, and not even, you know, sometimes depression in us does not look like depression textbook. So for me, I'm functioning every day. I'm running a 6-figure business. I am in a doctoral program. I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do. But when I'm going home, I am a slug. No energy, no nothing. And so I spent a lot of time like that. And so, yeah, being on the inside of that, sometimes people just don't see it. And sometimes it's our job or our mission to help them see that without telling them that, you know.
The other part of that is exactly what you described. And say you manage to be one of the lucky ones and you get out of a toxic relationship. You don't realize that now you've turned into that toxin for the next entry relationship that you go to. So I tell so many people who are out here dating, I'm like, are you available? Are you available? Have you done the work to rinse the residue of this last transaction that you've been in before you enter a new one? So many people are out here advertising themselves as available when they are the least of that.
Available does not equate to healthy. So you can be available.
Yeah. The least thing they need to do is have a sign on the corner saying, hey, look at me, you can have me. Because you, at some point after those toxic relationships, you have to start dating yourself. You have to re-engage learning who you are, and not who you were in that relationship, but who you are now, especially after that toxic encounter. And
healing from that, like taking the time, not just jumping into relationships, which I definitely did not do. I took an intentional 3 years from dating, dealing with any of that, and just being in therapy and taking care of myself.
That's because you had the tools. If a relationship go bad, I have got to get me a little rebound thing, so I can keep my mind off of it. I'm telling you, and ladies and gentlemen, therapists, we are a mess too. That's why we're in the field. When you come to us and you tell us your stories, we're like, yeah, I know. I've done that too. I get it. I know what you did, you know. But I had to learn from that behavior of that aspect of the rebound relationship is a real thing. And some people use it as a healing tool. And for me, I did. But it's so unfair to that rebound person who believes they found something. And you're just in here like, I just needed to use your shower. Like, I just
needed
to rinse off where I just came from. But while I'm here, let me ruin your credit and start a mix, you know, just different things like that.
Let me just put you on hold.
And so it's unfair for that too. So a lot of you enter relationships, make sure you are entering a relationship with someone who's available. Ask the questions. Do your due diligence. And when individuals give you answers that don't appear truthful, don't really register with what you're doing, ask a second layer question. You know, I just got out of a relationship. Do you have children? Yes. How old are your children? You know, he was born 2 weeks ago. A 2-week-old still has some connectivity to where that child came from. You know, so that's not someone who should be out on the street. Look, you should be decorating your nursery. What are you doing on Plenty of Fish? You know, you know, swiping to the left and swiping to the right. So those kind of things. So it's important that you also recognize whether or not you have manifested into a toxin after coming out of a toxic encounter.
And then to add what you said about listening to them, listen to what they say, because people will often tell you, I'm not ready for a relationship. I just got out of a relationship. Like you said, I have a 2-week-old. Like all of those are ways to tell you that person is probably not actually available to you and might not necessarily be a healthy relationship.
And I tell people all the time also that's not a bad thing. But some people like to be DIYs. They love those HGTV. And I tell you, I'm not ready for
no projects.
Yeah, but I'm not ready for a relationship. I'm not looking for that. Their eyes light up because here come a challenge. Here come a project. I'm gonna make him or her love me. And let me get my chase on. Let me put, okay, I thought I could wear my pencil skirt, but I gotta wear my poo-poo shorts, right? So I gotta see what he like, what he's into, what she wants, what I can grab her with. And when you're out there trying to put someone into a circle that they've already said they did not want to be in, and then it goes awry, you're angry at that person. But you had onset information of what they were looking for, what they could give, and what they could not. But you chose to ignore that because you were interested in managing a project. And that is the downfall of many. And I hate to say that, but our females are notorious for that. And that is also a generational trait. Amanda, before and earlier you asked about like the family connections. That is the source and model behavior of how you intersect in these relationships. And a lot of times we don't realize how much of that we carry with us. That some people gonna say, I'm breaking this generational curse, I'm breaking this chain. But in all, you have just changed the color of the chain. You've just changed the dynamic, the length of it, but you're still out there in it, practicing the behavior, just in a modernized version of it.
Absolutely.
No, you make such a great point. That kind of is a good segue. A lot of the way how, at least from my interpretation, a lot of how we model our romantic relationships is based off of our family dynamics that we saw growing up. So that kind of segues us into, what do we, how do we kind of manage our family relationships? How do you, because it's one of those things, you're either cursed or blessed with good or bad family in your life. Those are things that you just can't change. Your parents, your guardians, those are things we can't change. So if you grew up having a toxic environment with parents, those are things that were completely out of your control, right? How do you then, what does that kind of look like for a lifetime? How do we as people kind of help manage those? How do you know if it's a healthy relationship with your father, mother, brother, sister, uncle, whatever it may look like? How do you kind of, from y'all's professional experience, how do we manage family relationships in our lives, whether they're healthy or unhealthy?
Well, the key word in what you said was word. Oh, sorry. The key word that you said you were required to be in that situation. Once you hit adulthood, you no longer have to accept certain things, even from your family of origin. And I am not big into cutting people off unless they absolutely 100% need to be cut off and they are harmful. So that I think that you can set boundaries with people, even your family. And it is really hard to set boundaries with an adult, a parent at any age for most people. But that does not mean that it cannot happen and should not happen. So part of setting those boundaries might be, okay, if you are dealing with somebody that's consistently negative and you don't want to be in a negative space, then you might have to cut that conversation or, leave the room, leave the space, do whatever it is you're going to do. And let people know, okay, now, not necessarily announcing that now I'm an adult and I don't have to take your crap, but actually portraying that and letting them know that you will not accept certain things, even if you accepted them as a child, and also that it's something that you are not wanting to pass on to the next generation, to your own kids. And so that might involve limited contact with your family of origin, just to make sure that your kids are not getting that generational curse that might be passed down from your family.
And that's important. I think that, again, I'm a native New Yorker, but I'm the source of Southern roots and Southern parents. Heavily faith-based, almost hostage guilt trips of respect to elders and alliance to the family. I am a big component of family and togetherness, but there comes a time when you have to look out and realize what raised you. What raised you and how were you raised? What are some of the model behavior that you're carrying with you? And then you have to, Dr. Pickens is correct. It's time and temperature with family. If you know you're in a toxic family, why are you opting to stay the full Thanksgiving weekend? Come and have Thanksgiving. Catch your plate and get yourself Black Friday. So
stay in a hotel. Don't stay at the house. Other boundaries.
Exactly. For the funeral, maybe you cut out after the repast. You don't stay for the whole, rendition of how everybody did, what everybody did. there's things like that. And it's weddings and funerals that really tell you how you were raised. Funerals give you the highest insight of what is the caliber of family and connectivity. The other aspect is when we feel like we must. Like Dr. Pickens is right. You get a point where you have an age range, but that generational guilt and attachment can run with you deep into your 40s, 50s, and 60s. And by the time you realize, hey, this is not something I must do, I have to do, you've already integrated in it and passed it on. And I will say with my clients, one of the biggest eye openers of wanting to break it in generational change is when you reproduce. You have children, and you go through a climate of nesting and wanting to protect them from what you went through. So you don't necessarily leave them with your mother. You don't leave them with your sister and her kids and things like that, because you know what you've been going through that. And so it's not even, it's unconscious in some aspects, but it's that nurture, protect aspect of parenthood that kicks in where you've never done it for yourself, but you are ignited beyond recognition to do it for your young. And that's how you know you've had an encounter that you've never dealt with, but it's triggered you to know, I'm not going to leave my children with this uncle. I'm not going to leave my children in this household.
Oh, I didn't say, I was just shaking the head about the uncle.
Dr. Camille, you hit something that I don't want to...
Go ahead. We have a delay.
No, for sure. There was something you said there, Dr. Camille. I want to know, I want you to go into, you said married weddings and funerals tell us about the caliber of family dynamics. I want you to delve deeper into that. What do you mean by that? Explain how weddings as well as funerals delve
the highs and the lows of the family. The wedding represents the family extension, but it also highlights the connectivity and presence of the family. Who shows up to the wedding is, you got one quote unquote favored side of the family. Everybody's there. Another cousin got married, but they had to do it in the backyard. Another one got married. They shut down the city, for this particular one. It's just a reverence of where's the connectivity and awareness of presence to this family, and how do they celebrate bridging, integrating new aspects of family and joy and things like that. With funerals, we lose our minds. That's when the true covers are wiped back and we start to see, one, if we can make it to the funeral, that means we have been able to collectively come together and finance this event. That also brings out a great deal of trauma and turmoil in families when we come to planning. We are coming off of a generation that did not do well with death. They didn't like to discuss it, which means they did not manage or handle it. I will say this generation right now, they have plans. I mean, beyond trips to Tulum and things like that they got, and brunch, they have an understanding of planning for items that don't include a GoFundMe to get me in the ground. But at funerals is when families show their true selves. Individuals know who not to give the mic to. Individuals know who's in the parking lot having a conversation about this, that, and things like that. And a lot of the tyranny in families come out at funerals, especially when a patriarch or a matriarch passes. And that is, if that was the person that held everyone together, the funeral is almost like the passage of things are not going to be the way they were yesterday, unless there is another layer of generation, those first cousins, those devoted aunties that step up and take the place of the matriarch or patriarch of the family that was what held everyone together.
That's really fascinating. No, those are some really interesting points right there. Yeah, I don't think I really ever, of course you see crazy stuff at weddings, but I guess maybe sometimes that connection you don't necessarily make, that those are really examples and highlights of family's wellness. But no, thank you, both of you, dropping such amazing gems. Now, I kind of want to move on to, I want to get this perspective. I think, culturally, some people, they're never going to let go of their family. We're well aware of that. There are some people just, Dr. Pugh, you had mentioned you have Southern roots. Family is such a big thing. I'm Nigerian, family, again, such a big thing. A lot of people in a certain cultures, you'll be shamed if you become a black sheep, if you leave your family, cut off toxic relationships. So, you know, a lot of these things, they tend to just stay. A lot of people keep those toxicity, those toxic relationships with uncles, mothers, fathers. You know, what do you think is an accurate way for people to really handle conflict with family? These are such really, you know, they're differing from romantic relationships in the sense that your sister will always be your sister. You can't divorce your sister. You can't divorce your mom or dad. You know, let's say people don't want to go no contact and just cut off a relationship, even if they're adults. How do you handle, you know, toxic family members and conflict with them? Dr. Pickens, we can start with you.
Well, for one thing, when people come in to talk about that, the first thing I talk to them about is to temper their expectation. So if you have, if your grandmother has been the same person for 50 years, it's not likely that she is going to change her mind about, you know, like what you're telling her. And so when you're going into that, your expectation is that there is no expectation. So you don't expect, you know, a positive or a negative, because if you go into that thinking that you can just automatically change their mind after 50 years, you're going to end up being disappointed. So the second thing is to assess why you want to confront whatever it is. So is it something that you have to deal with? Is it like you're their caretaker or something like that, and so you have to constantly be around them? But Dr. Camille and I talked about it earlier too, when she talked about like going to Thanksgiving instead of staying for the whole weekend and just bathing yourself in toxicity, knowing that it's going to happen. You know, these cousins, these brothers and sisters are always going to fight. This person is going to drink. Somebody's going to do something. Somebody's going to come in and try to take the TV while everybody, you know, like all of that stuff, you know, happens every single Thanksgiving. So if you know that, then you come in, you come for the meal, you stay at a hotel elsewhere, and you're probably going to get crap for it, because especially if there's a family house, you're going to get it. But at some point, what you feel and what you need needs to become more important than what your family feels and needs. So if that means that that's going to make you healthy by staying at the hotel around the corner instead of staying at the house, then that's what you need to do, with the understanding that you're probably going to get crap about it, and that's okay. Because it's not, that crap is not going to kill you, because ultimately you're taking care of yourself and setting a boundary. Sorry, Dr. Camille.
No, it's okay. The most concerning aspect of me for family discord is the finite piece of it. When individuals make this like, I'll never talk to you again, you'll never hear from me again. And it's usually something that triggers that statement that's very small. And the worst part is when it's money, or it feels like there's been some breach of trust and connectivity. And it's usually not the true source of what everybody's upset about. The pinnacle straw that broke the camel's back is never really the source of what the anger really is. The anger really is when me and my mom were down, nobody helped our family. When everybody just kept going, nobody rescued me. You rescued everybody, but you didn't. You know, it's usually some other deeply rooted source, or it's a passed on source, where something happened with generation one, and that second layer of the ancestry has just heard the stories of how your side of the family was robbed of something when another family passed away, or some family got land, it didn't get land. But then there's also the family expectation. Amanda, you spoke of being Nigerian. Stereotypically, what are your family's expectations of you? It's not to be the host of Black Mental Health Matters, you know? You know, a lot of my Nigerian friends, I'm serious, and it's like a stereotype, but a lot of my Nigerian, it's medicine, it's engineering, it's law, you know, and it's like, you know, I don't have many of my Nigerian friends who say, yes, I'm about to be an influencer. Did you see that? You know, and so there's also this generational familiar expectation that causes a lot of strife. And you talked about the black sheep, but what if the black sheep just wasn't able to meet the expectations of the family? And instead of highlighting, you know, I'm going to be a teacher, or I've decided that I'm going to be an interior designer, or I'm going to be a farmer or something like that, they create conflict to give them a passage out of staying connected and judged. So a lot of times people think, you know, my family's like this, my family's like this. No, that was you. You felt like you didn't meet the mold, and so you sabotaged. And I don't think a lot of us realize how we become saboteurs when we're dealing with conflict. That's our way of pushing away and having like almost like a green light to our why. I did this because, they were over there, they did this. No, you pushed yourself out. You separated and segregated yourself because you didn't feel like you were meeting the expectations or mold of the family. And from a cultural standpoint, I find that to be very heavy and prevalent in today's generation. When we were growing up, people were like, what do you want to be when you go to school? Everybody had an answer to that. Now we're not producing teachers. We're not producing like mathematics, mathematicians, lawyers. We're producing TikTok dancers. We're producing content creators. We're producing cosmetology, all things we need, but we can't move away from the grassroots of what has kept our society going and booming. And there's a generation that's like, I don't want to do that. We're going to go through a period where we have a very low productivity in human space coming up because we have moved away from the design of helping professions and integral professions that steer and guide society. It'll manifest like all things. Like at one point, there was somebody who only worked on stage coaches, and then that career went away. So we have to learn to evolve with the times. I'm still trying to understand what is going to be the best benefit of content creators to long stream society and TikTok dancers. But I think that that generation would tell me it's big time for them. So I'm trying to figure out how that lands in the history books coming.
It's education. It's educational.
Education. Okay, there we go.
No, you all make such good points. And I think too, I want to kind of look at the kind of more the other spectrum of it. People that, maybe due to detrimental reasons such as severe abuse, whatever that may look like, they have had to cut off family. In some of these cases, for those are their situation, their reality. I think a lot of people wonder, well, how do you build those relationships now to develop your own support system? Because this is another big integral part of relationships. How do you build a support system when maybe you've had to cut off your family of origin? How do you build an actual support system with people in your lives?
I just promoted being genuine.
Anyone can take that.
I just promoted being genuine. There's so many people that go out and create new lives for themselves. And it looks so insincere and just not genuine. It's almost like a new like there was a young lady online, and it was like she was African as well. And she just said she felt always judged by African people. So she was like manifesting almost into a westernized Caucasian woman. And everybody was like, who, and like even from changing her name, like she had an African-based name, and everybody was calling her, and she had nicknamed herself Izzy or something like that. It was just like, we go through these things where people just look to try to create new facets of a life for themselves. And it's such an indication that you haven't healed or handled a residue from whatever source you are running from. And I tell people all the time, it catches up with you. Eventually Izzy's family is going to show up, and they're going to see this African like matriarchal family members, and they go, Izzy, we thought you were from Omaha, Nebraska. Who are these people? And things like that. And it's like there's but so much you can do to run from who you are. So at some point you have to find a dedication to standing tall and just dealing with whatever healing or nurturing you need to push and protect yourself from the harms that you felt like you've been inflicted in life.
And I would say in terms of creating that family, that is something that has happened in our culture for years. Most people have a play cousin, people that they call aunt, auntie, and uncle that are not actually their uncles. Just people who might be nurturing. Big Mama was not always related to everybody. And so those are healthy connections that might not be from the family of origin, or they could be extensions of the family of origin when the family of origin is not healthy. And those are beneficial to people as well, because that's the family that takes in the play cousin and raises them, because, whatever is going on with their parents, or the auntie or uncle that has taken that role of parenting for that young adult who does not either have a parent or, they're an unhealthy parent. So I think all of those are part of creating a family unit. It happens often for people.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. No, such great points. I guess maybe the kind of takeaway with that is too, just as long as you're in a safe environment, that's what's kind of number one, definitely for people to have around them. I kind of want to ask now, now back to let's focusing on mental health. How is our mental health impacted by our relationships, both romantic, familial? I mean, from your all's professional experience, I think people don't even give enough weight and gravity to how much our mental health is impacted by the relationships that are in our lives. How much for you all, I mean, from what you've seen, how much do these things really impact our mental health? And anyone can take that one.
I think, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Dr. Pickens. Go ahead.
I think one important part of that is the mind body connection, and that's where a lot of people miss that connection when those relationships are toxic or harmful or abusive. That does not necessarily have to come out in your outward behavior. Most of the time it does, because there are signs of depression or anxiety and things like that that might be attributed to something else, but also the physical symptoms: weight gain, weight loss, appetite, sleeping, not sleeping, sometimes just pain that people can't explain, and thinking that it's something that they have a whole physical, they have everything checked out, and nothing is going on with them from a physical standpoint. Well, some of that can be the somatic side effects of that emotional pain, unresolved emotional issues, all of those kind of things, and they show up and they get looked past. So that's one thing I want to say about that. Dr. Camille.
So I think what individuals don't realize is by the time the person in it, has a recognition of a mental health impact, all of your other facets have already failed. Like you just spoke of, the physical aspect is the first impact. Your behavior changes, motivation to dress well, your outfits change. Those sweatpants, they're real stiff, one, because you've been in them for 2 weeks. Okay, so hygiene, the showering, the doing of your hair, the growing of hair where hair is not supposed to be, and you just not taming and maintaining that. Scheduling, showing up, the social aspect of things, your spirituality, changes. There's a dip in that. And by the time you realize the mental aspect of I'm deep engaged in almost a depressive state, all of that have already manifested. You're like, I'm having these stomach pains, I'm having these headaches, I'm not responding well to this, but it's a physiological response to the mental health that you're not really addressing or adhering to. And I tell people all the time, by the time you recognize something's going on with you mentally, so much physically has been impacted and emotionally has been impacted that you're just waking up to what the outside public has been able to see for an extended period of time.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Now that's such a great point. It's mental body connection, and when those things are not in sync, you just start to notice all these different things. No, absolutely. And as I'm kind of wrapping up as these last questions, I mean, I know we had talked about this earlier, but what are these just major signs? Like Dr. Camille, you had said earlier, it's toxic when it's glaring. What are just kind of also, in addition to that, how do you know when you should just leave a relationship? When is it time to just say, you know what, I've given it all, but at this point, I need to just take care of my mental health? What are those signs, in addition to what we've been saying? What are some really just things for people to realize? Because as Dr. Megan had mentioned earlier, when we're in it, you may not even realize you're in it. And when you're in it and you're in love or you're whatever may have you, it's someone even tells you, hey, this is kind of unhealthy. Your first reaction is defensive as all can be. You're like, no, you're tripping. You're whatever it may be. What is something for people to know? Hey, this is a sign for you to leave. If you could even say what is a sign for people to leave. Dr. Pickens, we can start with you.
I would say probably one of the top ones would be over-compromising and changing who you are. So if you are in a relationship and you have to change things about you as a person at the core. So kind of like Dr. Camille mentioned some of the stuff earlier, like, okay, if you used to do one thing, go to brunch, and now you can't go to brunch and things like that. So those are kind of the least of the things. But I'm talking about like spending time with your friends and family. So now you're being isolated, or you're being criticized because you're close to your family. Because I've had clients come in where their mate is not close to their family. They don't have a good family origin. And so it becomes a problem in the relationship because they want to spend, every Sunday dinner with their family or something like that. And also the changes, the control part goes into the change. So it's not necessarily somebody saying, oh, well, this outfit will look better on you. It's more like, no, you need to keep your hair long. You can't cut your hair. You need to wear this. Don't wear that. I don't want people looking at you. I don't want people talking to you. Like if you're controlled, where you're so anxious, so every time you think about doing something, you're thinking about what that person is what their reaction is, then you're probably in a toxic situation. And you are being controlled sometimes without even knowing it.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of times it's so subjective as to the level of when is your moment, because it may be something small and something, especially in like the workplace. You're in a toxic job, but you're staying for the sake of staying. Or I got to pay this bill. I got this responsibility. But there will be something that just clicks in you, in the sense of I will lay in a cardboard box before I continue to endure. And it's that day that you close your laptop, you pack your belongings, and you walk. The same thing will happen in a relationship. You will be in a relationship, you will be, whether real or imagined, and they will be on, it'll be on, and you'll believe things are great, but everybody around you will see how toxic it is. And there will be one thing. You just made breakfast, and you went to put it on the table, and he was like, oh, I don't eat eggs. And he walks out the door onto his day. That is the day you start wrapping up your curling iron, grabbing your toothbrush. Of course, you're going to leave some traces of you there for the next young lady to find. and then you're gone. But it takes a moment of clarity and clarification. And it's usually not even the most glaring symbol or symptom of the toxic relationship that allows you to move forward. Like Dr. Pickens spoke about, there have been individuals in relationships where they've been struck physically, hit in the face, and still remains. And it has taken weeks or months after that initial encounter for them to say, I'm gone. And and it's very easy from individuals from afar to speak on what I would do if that was me. If you put your hands on me, it's not until you're in the midst of it, that you have true understanding of how stunned and paralyzed you are in the moment, to the point where you can't react. It takes a moment for you to react. And that moment could be weeks, hours, a month. The hope is that it's not years, that you stay someplace where your safety is compromised. But it's so subjective, Amanda. Individuals, especially when we have spent a great deal of time wanting love, wanting acceptance, wanting an embrace, we do a holistic line of compromise. And I will say right now, the gentlemen of our time are taking full advantage of the availability of compromise in young ladies. What you are willing to endure and put up with, that bar has lessened so much that gentlemen don't even have to work hard at keeping things from you. They are talking to the next one right in front of you. And you don't, and you're just like, who was that? That was Karen. And he's answering the question. He was like, don't get put off the team by asking questions about Karen. And you stay there, you finish your meal, and because you want to be there, you don't ask any more questions about Karen.
And then just to add to what you said about, I think too that people need to realize that when people are in love with someone, they give them a pass that they would not necessarily give somebody else. So while you might see somebody who sets boundaries well at work or with their family or whoever it is, like she said, you have to, there's a different catalyst for everyone. And so when that person reaches that boundary, that's when things will change. But a lot of times people are going to give people they love a lot more passes than they would give to anybody else.
Okay. I totally agree with that.
Absolutely. No, that's such a great point. Yeah, I completely agree with that too. You give those those people passes that you would not give on the usual to anyone else. And definitely, yeah, gems have been dropped. Thank you all so much for that. And you know what? Our last word, last question. As I said before, this is Black Mental Health Matters. So I think the question that we can end with: how can we effectively discuss our mental health in our relationships? How can we do that in a way that's conducive to us, that's safe for us? How can we discuss our mental health in our relationships? Dr. Camille, we can start with you.
Openly and honestly. Nobody wants to start the first date by, I just want you to know I'm a manic depression. I'm a manic depressive, and I eat my hair. And if you may find me at a point where I lock myself in the bathroom, it won't come out for 4 days. But do you want to go out for chicken and Chipotle? So it's important though that you manifest these things into relationships. And I'm not asking you to slam that down the first date. Give some individuals give individuals an opportunity on whether or not they need to know that information. If it's a first date, my first dates, I strongly encourage you not to be wedding planning. And so first ask yourself, is this going to manifest into a friendship? And if it's going somewhere, that's when you start to share pieces and nuggets of yourself, when you know that you're in a safe embrace and a safe, balanced environment with someone that needs to know that information. But if this is somebody is just staying for the weekend, they don't necessarily need to have your entire medical history. They just need to have the understanding of, I wouldn't give me alcohol if I were you. So that kind of stuff. I'm somebody different in that aspect, but you really want to time that conversation and make sure it's a deserving conversation of the person you're having it with.
And I also think that when that comes up in discussion, having discussions about what mental health might be to that person. And I'm not saying, like you said, not at the beginning and not so pointed, but bringing it up as a topic of the conversation, knowing how they feel about conflict resolution, communication, things like that, because that all will wrap into the mental health of the relationship. So it doesn't have to be done using the word mental health or using the word therapy, but you can feel people out and how they handle situations.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. Absolutely. Yeah, I think the big takeaway is making sure it's appropriate and safe to be able to discuss those things before you go for chicken and Chipotle, as Dr. Camille said. Chicken and Chipotle. There we go. All right, now everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to the show today. I want to give a big thank you to our guests. Now, we want to promote your work, so we can start with you, Dr. Camille. Please tell us your social media tags, your website. Tell us where we can check out all the amazing work that you're doing.
All right, Amanda, drop this in the chats for everybody. My name is Dr. Camille Jones, also known as Mrs. Doc Jones. So on Twitter, Instagram, I'm MRSDOCJONES. And I run a phenomenal organization known as Clinician Fest. And I'd like to welcome U.S. Africa in the house and everybody from across the pond and relatives here stateside to join us at Clinician Fest. It is a nonprofit that works. It's not Miss Doc Jones, MRS. What is it? MRSDOCJONES. You got that? Here we go. No, Daniel, that's wrong. That's somebody else's. Okay. So, and then Clinician Fest. Clinician Fest is it's a conference that happens on the first week of May, which is National Mental Health Awareness Month. And we bring collectives from nutritionists, psychiatrists, social workers, nurses, medical doctors, internists, and content creators and TikTok dancers on the scene to help with how do we manifest and navigate mental health and wellness. But then during the course of the year, we do Wellness Wednesday. So if anybody's looking for a segment to promote a wellness segment, reach out to us. We're at clinicianfest.com, www.clinicianfest.com. And I'm always a DM away. I am not going to participate in any type of popcorn pop-up shops or giving like that, but anything else you need from a mental health perspective, never hurt to reach out. Thank you so much.
Okay, say the question again. I was listening so much to what she said.
About yourself and how they can find you.
Okay, So I am Dr. Megan Pickens on all social media. I post different videos because I specialize and work with high achieving Black women. A lot of my content is about that and the health and wellness of Black women, high achieving Black women. When I say that, I mean women who are entrepreneurs, bosses, CEOs, all of that, who get left through the cracks because everybody thinks everything in their life is perfect and they don't need any help. And sometimes on their part, they don't ask for help. So that is my population. And I will be starting groups and group coaching for that population as well. Also, on the other end, for my mental health network, we provide CEUs with different speakers each month that talk on topics related to mental health, but sometimes not related to mental health and more related to the business of mental health, because we have a lot of people who are in private practice. And we also have a lot of people who are not being found for, as mental health providers. Even though we feel like, okay, it's easy to find a provider now, it's still hard for people because you have to remember the algorithms set up everything that you see. And so we see a lot of mental health stuff because we're in mental health. Kareem, therapyforblackmen.org is a good location to find therapists for Black men in mental health. I saw your post in the chat. Once again, you can find me on all social media at Dr. Megan Pickens, all lowercase, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all of that. Right now, there is some kind of glitch with Facebook and they have taken down my page and I need them to fix it. I'm calling you out, Facebook. So you'll probably get more information from Instagram right now, even though my population is on Facebook. So thank you.
Appreciate you guys having me. And I need everybody to understand the value in this forum. So jump up and step in when there's new topics and conversations to be had. I love the diversity of conversations we have centered on Black mental health and wellness. And I love the diaspora of being able to speak and relate from both a westernized perspective and abroad. That's always going to be necessary and needed because my experience in DC will differ from Amanda's experience in native Nigeria, as well as in, Arlington, Texas. That's a world of its own, Texas, things like that. Those over in Switzerland, Sweden, Germany, and even tucked away over in Southeast Asia. So do your part, join this community, be an active participant in this community because of all other things, Black mental health matters.
Thank you so much for having me as well.
You guys have a great weekend.
Absolutely, everyone with these amazing words. Thank you so much, and thank you all for tuning in to Black Mental Health Matters. Now, to support our show, please visit bmhm.org. Again, that's bmhm.org. Now, for the latest conversations on Black mental health, please join us next week. A big thank you to our amazing guests. All right, everyone, same time, same place, all next week. Bye, everyone.